Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pinard. You're on Booktube. There's so many things to go through today. I'm kind of nervous. It feels like a long time since I've done this, which is not true. So I don't know why I'm feeling nervous. It's a triple tag Tuesday. So for the past 2 months, I don't know if you noticed, but I've been doing Wednesday wrap, Wednesday wrap, Wednesday wrap, and then the last week of the month, switching it up to a triple tag Tuesday because I'm trying to catch up. And I've got all these to go through. These are my tags, and let's see, on this side, the backwards, all the dates on the side indicate when I've done the tag. So I'm like halfway caught up after a few months, which is pretty good. So I'm going to keep that energy going. Triple tag Tuesday. So what tags are we doing today? Well, if you saw the thumbnail and you weren't summoned here by notification, you know, but I'll get to them in just a second. I forgot to do an intro. So in case this is your first time here, sorry. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy writer and an eclectic reader. I read a lot and I love to talk about books and get people excited about books. And so I hope that's partly something we share and that's why you're here. And oh yeah, I go by this name, Queen of Books You've Never Heard Of. We'll get into that. So if you have any questions about that, pop it in the chat. It's still March, just barely, the last week of March. And so I am still reading Irish books for the Irish Readathon. And it's had some very fun side effects. So you'll see my last batch of Irish reads in the first week of April for my first Wednesday wrap, because I'll sort of resume the whole month and tell you what a fun time it was. The last... just for a preview, the last book that I finished for the Irish Readathon is called Irish Hunger, which I've had for a while. I don't remember where I got it, but it doesn't have either of the markings for the bookstores that I know best, so maybe over 10 years ago. It's edited by Tom Hayden, Personal Reflections on the Legacy of the Famine, the Great Hunger, and it was fantastic. So I'm looking forward to sharing lots of thoughts about that. And because I finished that so quickly, like I read that in about 2.5 days when I thought it was going to drag, I started on the last one, which is the Heinrich Bull Irish Journal, which is his travel diary in the 1950s, right after World War II. Is a German going to Ireland and touring, and I am, I don't know, maybe like a third, maybe a half through that already. This goes really fast. It's an interesting style, so I'll be able to report back on 2 books next Wednesday. Pretty excited about that. Let's see, what else was I going to cover? My little rhyme, I'll skip that. It's Irish Readathon time, so I was going to ask if anyone was feeling lucky, because last week I was actually feeling really lucky. I found a table that I've been looking for 8+ years, because of the way the apartment is shaped. It would just be the best type of table, but it was way too expensive. And I finally found an IKEA version used at the thrift store that was in my budget. And I was like, oh God, do I still want this? Do I take this chance? And I did. And then I figured out how to get home, because that was also sort of like another obstacle. So yeah, so now I have this beautiful tulip table in my little window nook, and it just makes the whole place look like airier and floatier and, I don't know, less cluttered, if I do say so myself. So excited about that, and I hope you have had some lucky things happening in your life as well. So just want to say hi to some of the people who have shown up in the chat. Easy Graphics was here early to say have a good session, so thank you. Brian is here. Hey, Brian. Jeremy on his lunch break, so can't stay, but wanted to drop in and show some support. Much appreciated, Jeremy. Did I say that? The book was fantastic. And I don't know if anyone else recognizes the name Tom Hayden. This guy was one of the Chicago Seven who was really famous during the Civil Rights Movement, and he married Jane Fonda. Didn't stay married because obviously those people have multiple marriages, but I was like, who? I'd never heard of him. So, yeah, I got to hear a little bit about his life in the essay or two that he did. Leslie's here saying good morning. Floatier, right? We have free license to coin words at will. Yeah. I never heard of him. I think like Gen X may have heard of him and been close enough to hear about him. So yeah, just a little slight age difference makes a difference there. Okay. So the 3 tags that are on the thumbnail, we've got, first of all, Scottish Patter. Oh boy, this is going to be bad. And Brian just got back from a trip to Scotland, so he'll be able to judge quite fairly, I think. So this is a tag by Sadie Reads Again. That's Sarah, and she hasn't been on Booktube in a while, so this is probably like almost a year old of a tag. I wish she'd come back. She has great reviews, and I miss her content. But why can't I see my info? Here we go. But yeah, so I was tagged by Sadie Reads Again in this original tag. So I'm going to be tagging people at the beginning so they can hear their names called. Camilla at Hasty Books, who lives, I think, part-time in Scotland, or did at one point. Chrissy at Lost in a Book BRB, who is more on TikTok, but may be coming back to YouTube because there might be a TikTok ban. I don't know. And Ben at Doom Antidote, who has lovely, crazy, antic-ridden videos where he puts on accents and silly costumes, and I think he would do a brilliant job trying out the Scottish Patter. So, without further ado, let's go through the questions, and they're very, very really well thought out. Yes, 2 of the tags today are rather involved. So, the first question for the Scottish Patter tag is, "All right, pal," and they give a definition, a greeting, a term of endearment. Tag 4 people you'd like to see this tag. Well, I just tagged 3. Question number 2. Did I sarcastic, said when you don't believe someone? They're pretty self-explanatory, most of them. Name a memoir or biography that wouldn't be believed in fiction. Okay, so I have 2 for this. And I put them on overlays because I decided to get fancy. So I looked and I did not talk about this book yet. I think I was waiting because next month I actually get to produce a talk with Jacqueline Winspear, who is, as you know, one of my favorite authors because I talk about Maisie Dobbs nonstop. This is Jacqueline Winspear's memoir. It's called This Time Next Year We'll Be Laughing. I talked about it a little bit, but I didn't review it, which I should do. It's a beautiful memoir. She has some supernatural things, which you wouldn't be surprised by if you've read Maisie Dobbs, and some like really painful things. And so I just thought this is a really well-written memoir, and you sometimes have a hard time believing everything that has happened around this person. So that's number 1. And the other one was Wandering in Strange Lands by Morgan Jerkins. This is the first book I read this year. It's a 5-star memoir. This is writer Morgan Jerkins traveling to different spots in the U.S., delving into the African-American culture of that place, which is distinct in each place she visits, and also finding a link back to her own family tree. And yes, it is hard to believe that not 1, not 2, but 3 places she finds when she doesn't expect to find, people in my family tree. There are possible linkages. And so she sort of leaves it up to could be, could not. But yeah, truth can be stranger than fiction. So I liked how she explored that and just sort of left it open. And if you believe, you believe. If not, that's fine too. So I really liked those 2 books. Definite recommends. Question 3. A wand by your head. Anger, frustration, telling someone who's talking nonsense to get lost. And if you can't tell, awa is away, and bile your head is boil your head. And these are just like the Scottishisms. Name a book that made you angry. Okay, so a book that made me angry was Regeneration by Pat Barker. Not because it's a bad book, it's a very good book. I read it as a buddy read with Sandy of Ms. Reads a Lot and really enjoyed it. But there's a character in there who is based on a real life person, Dr. Yayland, who has basically a very unsympathetic, almost torturous type of therapy that he's giving the returned soldiers from World War I, and it's just destructive. And so when I was reading it and his talking to the patient and what he was doing to the patient, like electroshocks and stuff, I was getting angry. I was like feeling it in my gut. So that was definitely like a anger reaction. So really well written and scary that it's based on real psychotherapy, right? Question 4. Havne Scooby. Nonplussed, when you don't have a clue. Havne meaning like haven't a. Scooby is just like another term for like a not bat's chance in hell. Anyway, you get the idea. Havne Scooby. A book you couldn't follow or one you didn't understand the popularity of. So I've got several for this for different reasons. I read Snow Country, which is, I think, a Nobel Prize winner, translated from the Japanese for some readathon earlier and like didn't get it. It was one of these like it's a man who visits a country spa for a long time and develops a relationship with a woman, but like, is there a protagonist? Is there a conflict? Is there a winner? Is there a point? I didn't get it. So the Nobel is just sort of lost on me. We've got The Vanishing Museum on Rue Mistral, which is a mystery, but it was entirely too wrapped up with these two Frenchmen thinking they're the shit. So I just didn't really appreciate that. We've got The Door, which I read for my Patreon book club, and it was intense and enervating and interesting to talk about, but super frustrating to read. So that was a wits pick for August. And I mean, I'm glad I read it, but it wasn't fun. So, and then The Other Black Girl, which has had lots of publicity about people having very varying opinions on it. And I will just say that it was disorienting because it switches from one expectation to another. And so it left me unsatisfied. And that's like the non-spoiler part that I will give. So yeah. Whew, checking in here. Number 5, a belter. Admiring descriptive, when you think someone or something is amazing. So a beloved character. I had several to choose from. Let's see who anyone recognizes. We've got Mary Russell. We've got Sandy Rogers. See who in the world is going to recognize these character names without me mentioning the book. Ahmad Malik. I don't remember that one actually when I wrote it down. Wes Lawson. Resand. And Ned Wentworth. And so the only one that I put on a thing here is the Ned Wentworth because he's a standout. Grace Burrowes is a mystery historical romance author, and I just read her latest Never a Duke. Sorry, it's this way. And this is what won me as a fan. So I've read 2 other books by her now, and they're not as tip top because I think her latest work is definitely her best work. So, I mean, that's good, right? That's success, progress. Because the mystery on this is so tight and the action and everything is like really tense and suspenseful, and even like the romance parts with like the manners or like the dangers or the pressures for the romance are also like really screwed in tight so that you're like on the edge of your seat. So I really like this and I loved the details. It is, which era is it? I'm trying to think. I think it's like 1850s. like between Regency and Victorian. And so I liked the details that she put in. But this is several months ago, so I'm not going to recall exactly. It doesn't exactly match up to the cover dress, but then historicals never do because people are not as discerning. Okay, we'll let that go. Oh, okay, so let me catch up on the chat because these are from things a bit ago. I can recommend the movie The Trial of the Chicago 7. Is that on Netflix? There's one that I've had for a long time and I haven't like actually watched it. It's just been on my list. Jeremy says, I'm glad you keep embracing multiple tags in videos. Yes, and as you notice at the top of the description, which has a lot of information as well, I put honoring Jeremy Fee because he's the first person who started the triple tag challenge, shall we say. So I put him in it every time because he's the inspiration. So did anyone recognize any of the other characters that I named? Would be interesting to see if anyone did. I know Sandy Rogers is from Langston Hughes's book. Mary Russell is from Laurie R. King's series. Why am I blanking on Ahmad Malik? Ahmad Malik, beloved character. I will have to look this back up because I prepared for this way ahead of time. Wes Lawson. Nope. This is great. This is when you prepare too early. Okay. The next question is ball bag. A scrotum-based insult, which can also be affectionate. Welcome to Scotland, says Sarah. A hated character. Okay, so a hated character. I put Devil in Wicked and the Wallflower, which is a historical romance that I was just meh about. He's like an evil duke who turns out to be the love interest. And I was just, no. Trying to remember why. Could have been the book. I just was not having it. Number 7, Tukter. I'm not sure how to say this, but I hope that's right. Description: a person who comes from the Highlands. A book from off the beaten track of your country. Oh, okay. Tukter. So I had 2 for this one. One Dark Body by Charlotte Watkins Sherman is one of the books that I read for a readathon last year, and it had been on my shelf for a long time. And it's actually about rural African-American community in Washington State and like the back forests where there's like swamps and stuff, like rainforesty things, and the culture that they brought with them when they immigrated from the South. And that was like, I know this exists, but I've never seen a portrayal of this type of community. So I thought that was really cool. And it's in my area, Pacific Northwest. So that was extra cool. And then also off the beaten track, many of the short stories in Leah Angstman's Shoot the Horses First. So if you've heard of Leah Angstman on Booktube, it's probably because I have read a couple of her books, as has Jim's Books Reading and Stuff may have only read the first one, but he really liked the first one too. So yeah, she's a great writer. But the first book that we read was like a historical romance with lots and lots of detail on setting, and like 17th century Eastern Seaboard America, Long Island, lots of detail on the indigenous population. And this one, it does have one really long short story that is about another indigenous tribe's interaction with early American settlers. Super intense, really good. I keep thinking it's a whole book, but it's just one of the stories in Shoot the Horses First. There's really short ones. There's really like mid-length. It's a very varying, why do I keep saying that? Collection. But lots of things off the beaten track. And this is where Leah Angstman sort of speaks to my soul, because I am the type of writer that likes to pick one weird thing happening. For example, I don't know, the tariffs on Barilla coming off after the Napoleonic Wars ended. and think, gosh, how would this have affected the average crofter on the Isle of Mull in the backwaters of Scotland? Because it had a big effect. And that's where we get my trilogy, Remnants. Speaking of which, I forgot to get this link. I just saw Berna's Bookish Adventures pop up her announcement for a read-along. She's going to be reading the trilogy, which is so exciting. It starts off with The Keening, it goes to The Grasping Root, and it finishes with Stormwrack and Spindrift. So it's just 3 books in a trilogy, and that is the exact premise, the one that I just said. So we're on the Isle of Mull, and we follow this family as they navigate the economic downturn. So, not relatable at all. Yes, so off the beaten track, and I have just gotten off the beaten track myself. Next question. Pure Baltic. Description. Very cold. Baltic. There we go. Pure. I don't know how Scott would say pure. Now I'm freaking myself out. Okay, Baltic. Anyway, a book set in a cold location. You can also have a rainy option with Drich. And I know how to say that because I did practice that. Okay, so I would say, let's see. Spirit Things by my friend Laura Messersmith-Glavin. She is a part of Fisher Poets, and they talk about fishing and how it's fed into and influenced poetry and literature. But she also grew up on an Alaskan fishing boat, and her memoir, Spirit Things, uses the conceit of material object culture to sift through and catch in her nets stories of her childhood and ways that she makes meaning and things that are important to fishers, but as well in her life. So awesome memoir. I loved it. So very rainy in Alaska, I'll say that. Also cold is The Stopping Places by Damian Lebat. So that's a book I read a few months ago. It's about Gypsy Britain, and he is the author who is of that heritage who uses that word. So I'm just repeating that. Don't mean to offend anybody with it. He talks an awful lot. The book is about his sort of quest to find the places where his family used to stop at with their caravans and with their nomadic culture, because now, because of British policy, because of convenience, a lot of people have settled down instead of roaming. And so he tries to go to these places and sort of unearth this family history or ancestral history. And a lot of the time is spent trying to get out of the cold, like to insulate his van, to keep cold, to like get the food hot. So that memory stayed with me for The Stopping Places. Great book. Definitely recommend it. Next one, we've got Tapsaf, a description of weather or joyous exultation when it's sunny and warm enough to strip off. Rare, she says. Tapsaf. That must be like tops off. Okay. A perfect summer read or your most inappropriate beach read. Okay. So which way did I go with this? Either way, you could really, what's your judgment of inappropriate, right? So, what's his face? Gore Vidal, Perpetual War for Perpetual Peace. That's an inappropriate beach read. That would, the feeling of relaxing on a beach when it's sunny is not the feeling that will get along with what you're feeling when you read Perpetual War for Perpetual Peace, which is something that Vidal wrote, I think in like 2003, 2002, after 9/11, talking about the Iraq War. Like, basically the war machine in America has never stopped since World War II, and like we can't build the economy around this, and it's ridiculous, and like all the fallout, pun intended, from that kind of stuff. Anyway, it's a short book. It's sort of an expansion on a New York Times essay or something like that. And it was okay. Not really great. Kind of outdated reading it 20 years later. Not an appropriate beach read. A different kind of inappropriate beach read might be The Obsession by it's by Jeannie Lynn, but she has a different pen name. And that's one that I reviewed for short stories in October as like smutty reads, because she calls it historical erotica, which I did not know was a thing before I saw her interview and picked it up. And I mean, it's very close to what you would normally consider a beach read. It just goes a little further. So you might encounter difficulties if you're reading this on the beach, let's just say. Emma is here to say, hello, lovely. I read a wonderful book about a family who moved to Iceland for the year. I'm now obsessed with Iceland. Oh, is this with the cold? The cold prompt? Brian's also hoping to go to Iceland. Nice. But you have a family, Emma. Would you be wanting to take them with you as well? That's the problem. Okay, the next question is called greeting, an action, crying. And I think I actually have this word in my book, so kudos. What would make you cry more? Never being able to reread your favorites ever again, or never being able to read anything you hadn't read before? And my answer is I'd cry more if I could never read anything new. Like, my favorites, they're stored in there. I don't need to read them to like savor the joy they brought me. But if I never got to read anything new again, like I'd never get to read anymore. That would seriously curtail my learning and my way of relating to other people. So that would be a tearful, tearful journey. Let's see. That was an easy one. No books. Number 11, go on yourself. Encouragement, go for it. A book that lived up to the hype, and or does hype shape your feelings about a book? Okay, so let's see. Oh, and I had a recommendation for this one too. So lived up to the hype. So Class Matters by Bell Hooks. Yes. And I reviewed this in my Wednesday wrap up, the last one for February, I think. And it was my first Bell Hooks, and she lives up to the hype. I was like, why did I wait so long to read a book of hers? Normally she talks about and is known for talking about feminism and racism and how they intersect. This was class being brought into it and being focused on. So I will move back into her other subject matter as well. But seriously on target. Written, oh no, I can't remember. Around the year 2000. So not that long ago, but seriously predicts a lot of the things that have happened in the last 20 years. We'll just say that. So yeah. And as for the question, does hype shape your feelings about a book? Yes. If you have been on this channel before, you may have heard me say I am allergic to hype. And this goes for books. This also goes for people. If something is really, really popular, typically I just steer away. And, maybe that's something to tease apart in therapy, or, maybe it's just a natural reaction for an introvert. I don't know. What other books have lived up to the hype? How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith, and Brian can second me on this one. Radiance by Grace Draven. This was all over the Booktube girlies pages and the TikTok, I should say, girlies pages. I sprung for it when I had to get ebooks on Amazon to be able to review, and loved it. So yes, Radiance. Braiding Sweetgrass, waited way too long to read that, by Robin Wall Kimmerer, 555 a million stars. And The Fox and I, which was recommended by another Mighty Blazer, and is a beautiful nature memoir. Oh, speaking of nature memoirs, that's one of the lists I have. So all the books that I'm recommending, not the ones that I'm hating, but recommending, are in the description with like direct links, or you can go to my Bookshop link to see all my lists. I've got romance, I've got nature, I've got I don't have a mystery one. I need to work on a mystery recommendations, because that would be a good one for people too. All right, Guan Yarsil. And then we've got the last one. 12 is Giat Lalli, a description of behavior to really get carried away in the moment. I don't know. Giat is give it, but Lalli, I cannot tell you the root of this. Shout about a book you don't think enough people have read. Well, besides all the other ones that I recommended to people as queen of books you've never heard of, underrated recommendations. I will return to The Women of the Copper Country by Marie Doria Russell. Excellent. 5 stars. Historical fiction, labor history, sad, but like bittersweet and hits you in the gut and just really good. Lean Out by Tara Henley, who's a Canadian author who talks about kind of like our malaise at the moment or a few years ago and what that means for our mental health in her own experience. And of course, Sunshine by Robin McKinley, which we all wish had a sequel, but didn't. So yeah, that's fantasy vampire love story for anyone, but it's much funnier than Twilight. So yeah, so that is the Scottish Patter. I hope I didn't hurt anyone's ears too much with that. And now we're ready for our next tag, but let me just like check in with people. And your library sucks, Emma. I don't know. I've had trouble finding books lately. Like, I will try to link them in the description, but sometimes Bookshop doesn't have them, and then my library doesn't have them because like half of them are closing and all of the holds are going to be unavailable, as well as interlibrary loan where you can get it from other library systems. I'm going to be hurting for the next year. It's fine. Multnomah County will be better and when it's all over. Blackwell's doesn't have them. I'm like, how do I buy these books without using Amazon? Yeah, the hype thing. Emma agrees. Yep. Brian is reinforcing the recommendation. How the Word is Passed is so good. And it really goes along with Morgan Jerkins' book, Wandering in Strange Lands, in terms of visiting sites and delving into local history and seeing how it informs, in her case, her perception of her family and how she faces life. And in his case, how the American public and all its diverse sections faces up to life and its history. So yeah, very interesting. Leslie has Braiding Sweetgrass on my shelf. I'm definitely going to get to it in 2024. That's another year! You're going to be sorry you waited another year. I'm just saying. But I know you have the project of like highlighting authors each month. I hope you're getting other people in with your single author per month, because that would drive me crazy if I couldn't read anyone else. Whew. Fish. Okay. Jim is here. Greetings and salutations. Jim, you already got shouted out when I talked about Leah Angstman. I hope you're feeling better. Yes, welcome. So we're done with the first tag. What is next? We're going to go with the book snob tag next. And for this one, I'm tagging at the beginning. Who am I tagging? It is made by Tia and All of the Books. I was tagged by Gina Stanier Books, and I'm going to tag Anne with a book, Bibbidi Bobbidi Books, which is Ellie, and Heroine's Corner, which is D. They all have delightful book channels, and so I think they would enjoy answering these because they do tags. So, this is a shorter one, and then the last one is long again. So, adaptation snob. Number 1, do you always read the book before you see the movie? Go back to my notes here. Book before movie? Yes, except Austenland. I read the book after seeing the movie, and I still love the movie better. So, ixnay on the snobbe there. And also sci-fi thrillers. Sometimes those get filtered to me through movies first before books, and I don't really see the need to read the thriller book after I've seen the movie, because you've already got the twist and the answer, and like, what's the point? I don't know. You can disagree with me on this one. Number 2, format snob. You can only choose one format in which to read books for the rest of your life. Which one do you choose? Physical books, ebooks, or audiobooks? I'm sorry. Is there a choice here? Is there a choice here? I don't know. This is not a choice. Physical books, all the way. As long as my eyes can do it, I will read physical books till doomsday. 3, ship snob. Would you date or marry a non-reader? And I have done, so this is definitely within the purview of the dating pool, and it's entirely possible. And the funny note, the side note on this, is I referred to the Bluebeard and the Mermaid tales. And in case anyone doesn't get the obvious correlation there, Bluebeard was a myth or legend where I think he's the one who's the guy in a castle and he keeps marrying people and they keep disappearing because he tells them not to look in this one room of the castle and everything else is golden, but they can't not look in the one room. And when they do look in the one room, it's full of like murdered wives previous. And so they get shoved in and he goes to the next person. So, can you see the correlation yet? The mermaid tale that I'm referring to is the Selkie tale. So the Irish legend that like a fisherman caught a Selkie in woman's form and she became his wife. And is it a Selkie tale? Anyway, basically she would take a bath and like return to fish form behind the closed door. And she told him, never open the door when you see me doing this. And he did once, and then even though she had kids with him, she went off back to the sea. This is a very confused, jumbled tale. But the point is, between the mermaid and the Bluebeard, is that reading is an escape for me. And it's like quiet time. It's mental health time. It's like my room that no one can come to because it's in my head. So if I'm dating someone who's not a reader, they just have to understand that they have to respect that room and like I need time to read. If it was a matter of like you're reading too much, or like what's the deal, why don't we go do this thing, why are you reading, and they were not respecting that, then there would be problems. So as long as you don't go into that room, darling. Anyone with me on that? Anyone follow that metaphor? I hope so. Alrighty. Bye, Emma. Talk to you later. See, my shelf is too full. I have a backlog for about 2.5 years. See, but I pull things to the front, shove things to the back all the time. I just get loosey-goosey. All right, so that was 3. Number 4, a genre snob. You have to ditch one genre, never to be read again for the rest of your life. Which one do you ditch? This is pretty easy. Everyone will know it's horror. Like, we have the world for that. Why would I need to read it? That's not an escape. That's not what I want in my room, my secret room. Number 5, uber genre snob. You can only choose one to read from for the rest of your life. Which genre do you choose? And what did I put for this one? Oh, my genre, of course, historical fiction. Because not only do you get an escape, you also learn about a different period in history, which can help you in your real life. And I don't know. I think historical fiction works your empathy muscle. But what do you think? It's entirely possible to just skip over that and like act like Teflon and not have it affect you. But at least in my writing, I feel like that's one of the subtexts. It's like this has happened before in history, and this should inform all of our policies and treatment of people, that sort of thing. So definitely historical fiction for the win, especially if you can do like Grace Burrowes and make it mystery and romance and history. Like, yes. So you get all of them, but it's still historical fiction. That's the gold. The gold ring? The brass ring. That's what I meant. Number 6, community snob. Which genre do you think receives the most snobbery from the bookish community? Let's see. Hands down, romance, and then probably self-help. Jim in the comments here, and then maybe young adults, because Brian's project about like reading books. So yeah, I think romance, while it has its own community of like firm stalwart fans who are willing to go to the mat for it, I think a lot of folks in the greater bookish community, so not YouTube, but like, I don't know, reviewers and the Times and editors and people at the Big Five, for example, look down on genre in general and romance in particular. Probably because of its audience, which is women readers. That's some disrespect right there. And maybe because it's more formulaic and it takes less time to put out the product, so it's assumed that it's less quality. And I mean, that's an argument, but the people like the product. So, I mean, why mess with good chocolate? And then the third point on that was, what was I just going to say? Just going to say something about romance. I forgot it. That's fine. But yeah, so romance and then self-help. So why would self-help be looked down on? Well, because there's a lot of quacks in the genre, which is totally true. There's a lot of gurus. I just tweeted about Alice Capel's video about parasite class people, and they're like influencer gurus who are trying to get rich on passive income. And, you know, there are some YouTubers in that class as well, but I'm thinking also like hustle bros, like crypto bros, like some of those categories, very valid. And they could be described as being in the self-help space. But I will say, I have benefited from a lot of self-help books, whether it's psychology, whether it's relationships, whether it's entrepreneurial stuff. Like, you do have to read some dross, but you can get to really helpful material depending on what you're looking for. So self-help. Excuse me. And then YA. We come to YA. So Brian's project that I mentioned was checking out bigger Booktube channels because he was trying to analyze his bias against young adult book reviewing channels that had lots of subscribers, if I'm getting that right, and sort of give them another chance to see if what he had preconceived about them was true. And I think in the last 5 he's done, the answer was no, and they have really cool blah, blah, blah. So I think that is the general impression. And to sort of step back a bit, I would say like young adult sort of came into its own after I was a young adult. It wasn't really a thing then. So in the last 20 years, it has become its own genre, gotten its own sort of issues, and been a huge moneymaker. So any huge moneymaker in the publishing industry is going to be beaten like a dead horse, right? And so rightfully so, I think people are skeptical of things marketed as young adult because sometimes it's people just trying to make money. But also you can have great young adult stories. So it's just like self-help, I think, you know, give it a chance, develop your discernment indicator, and you might find some good stuff. I've read a lot more good stuff than I have bad stuff since I've been on Booktube. So if that helps you dive in. Jim says romance is the best-selling genre on Amazon by far. Brian says that's a pretty good description. I kind of stopped the project because I began to feel uncomfortable with the videos I was making. Right. Like, you made your point. I think. I am actually, and like, there's 3 people on right now, so you get to hear my thought process is that this May, I'm going to do May of the Moderns for 3rd year. And is it the 3rd year? Yeah, I think so. And that's going to be the final year because I feel like I'm trying to running dry on like more good books in the modern era that I want to read. So I'm going to move on to something else that I want to read, because why support a project that isn't what I want to read? That's silly. So yeah, I'm going to be moving on to something that I may have discussed already today as a readathon, and doing that maybe later this year. So that's the exciting exciting thing that came up in my morning pages today that's getting shared with you guys. All right, so last question for Book Snob is snobbery recipient. Have you ever been snubbed for something that you have been reading or for reading in general? Oh, well, let me tell you. Again, prepared for this in advance. And what I said was the proactive reader chooses to read before being snubbed. This is a little petty. This is me being a little petty and saying, I don't care what you think. I'm reading before you even pass judgment on me. So let's break that down a bit. Snubbed for something that you've been reading? I don't think so. Do I perhaps choose what I'm reading out in public? Maybe. But I don't think so. Or for reading in general. And like I said, there's the hypothetical situation of dating a non-reader and being disrespected for reading too much. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. Basically, because I still spend a lot of my time alone, and so no one can say shit to me about too much reading. Unless I'm doing it on company time or something, which isn't an option at the moment because no company is paying me anything. All right, well, that is our book snob tag. Thank you very much to Gina for tagging me. And we're going to roll into our third one after a small break because my voice is getting crumbly. Did I? I didn't even notice. Yes, alone time. Okay, the last tag, and I will tag the people first. Let me explain. It's a long one. It's involved. It's got lots of whale facts. So let's see. We've got the originator of the tag, which is Book Time with Ryan, who was in the chat early when I first posted this last week. So sorry I didn't shout out Ryan. Thank you for stopping in. Hopefully he'll stop in again later. And Beth Ann Berniga Socolar, who's the one who tagged me. People who love whales, people who love science. And it says at the end to tag 5 people, but I'm tagging 4 because I'm preserving my individualism. So, Noah, everyone who reads it must converse. You are tagged in this. Tangible Reads, one of my new subscribes. You are tagged in this. Heidi at My Reading Life and Doris at Aldi Books. I couldn't miss out tagging you guys because you run the Naturalist Book Club. So I feel like you really should do this whale tag. And last I checked, you hadn't done it. So apologies if you have, but there we go. But yeah, you should definitely look into doing this, perhaps together. That might be fun too. All right, so we're moving on. Ryan's tag here has a lot of facts in it. So I'll just read these. Blue whale. The blue whale is the largest, heaviest animal on Earth ever. What's the longest book you've read or want to read? Or what's the heaviest subject you read about? See what he did there? So let's see. This question comes up pretty often in tags. And so I thought I would pop back to where I answered it, where I had to research it before, which is for the 1001 books tag. So feel free to pop on over to that old video, trying to get those out in the world as well. I think when I go to Goodreads, and Storygraph doesn't let us sort by page length of read books, it was Diana Gabaldon and Dickens between the two. Dickens, it would be the law. Oh, what is the name of it? I forget it every time. Jarndyce and Jarndyce, whatever that book is. Bleak House. And Diana Gabaldon, I think it's Echo in the Bone, maybe that was the longest in page length. Anyway, one of the Outlander novels. Neither are the heaviest subject, but we'll just go with the longest because that's what I looked at. That's for the blue whale. Number 2, sperm whale. Sperm whales routinely dive to a depth of 2,000 feet to feed on squid, but can dive to a depth of 10,000 feet. What is a book that has motivated you to look deeper into a subject, character, situation, or series? Interesting question. I like how he related all these. It's great. And I would say best science and nature writing, 2022. So I read this book because it's edited by a person who wrote a previous book, All We Can Save, that was like monumental. I loved it. So I saw this, a new book, and I still bought it. And it's little pieces of very different topics by scientists and naturalists, the best writing of that year. And what came up that was like the most interesting conversation starter? Human composting. I think that was like the third essay. Hold on, I need to get a Kleenex. So, human composting. Anyone heard of this? I think I might have talked about it when I reviewed the book, but like, what? I'd never heard of this. I've heard of burial. I've heard of cremation. I've heard of sky burial. But the composting was new. It's actually being piloted in southern Washington, so like not far away, just back there. And it sounded like really eco-friendly. So I mentioned it to my dad. Like, how do you get in line for this? It sounded pretty cool. Mine was over 1,000, but like I've said before, it was murder to read because I had it on a tiny, tiny Kobo, and there was only like 2 paragraphs per page, and my finger got numb. Like I feel like I lost my fingerprint reading that book. Yeah. So yeah, human composting. There's a lot of stuff in there. Like they went from buttholes to human composting to like really interesting stuff like you would never think of, and just like opened my mind to things of science that I didn't know were studied, you know? Very cool. Question 3, humpback whale. Humpback whales sing long, complex songs they have in common with other individual humpback whales. These songs can change uniformly for entire groups of whales. What's a book that has changed meaning for you over the years? Why did it change? Rereads. So I think the closest that I can come to answering this is Jane Eyre. So I was a Jane Eyre fangirl from like age 15 when I first read it, when I visited, now I'm going to forget. H. Begins with an H. It's not Hampton. Jim, help me out. Where did the Brontes live? In the Yorkshire area. I'm blanking on it. And got like all the souvenirs and the bookmarks and like loved Jane Eyre. Charlotte Bronte was my favorite. Not only is her birthday right next to mine, but like her sensibilities much better aligned with mine than Emily's. And I haven't read Anne's book, so. But later you sort of look at Jane Eyre with the post-colonial lens and go, oh, there's some problems with that whole parasite class, as it were. So yes, Howarth. Thank you. Gosh, my brain today. So yeah, why did it change? Because I learned and grew in my understanding of how the world works and recognized that the privilege afforded these people to go through their growth was predicated on the erasure of the people who were supporting them, namely the plantations or the places referenced in the West Indies, Madeira, all that stuff. So just like a whole nother layer of like understanding what supported that society was important. And so now I'm kind of like, it's still a good story in terms of a love story, in terms of redemption, in terms of a woman's independence and reliance on herself. There's a lot of still great quotes, but like the packaging and everything is slightly problematic. So Also, for some reason, I woke up this morning wanting to write a short story that started off with, "There was no possibility of a walk that day," which, if you know Jane Eyre, is the first line. So I don't know. The book is in my consciousness this morning. Question number 4, orca. Orcas, or killer whales, are incredibly smart social whales / or parenthesis dolphins. I don't know what that means. What's a book you felt was especially smart, fiction or nonfiction, and made you really think? So smart. So I put down 1, 2, 3. I don't know why I put that. Oh, this year. Sorry. I limited to this year, 23 with an apostrophe. Clint Smith's book, How the Word is Passed, Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, and last year is Whose Freedom by George Lakoff. And this is a backlist book, and I don't think many people on Booktube are aware of it. He's a political personality, I think. But the book was really interesting in terms of analyzing how the political conversation and if you want to talk about wokeness, certain dog whistles and subtext of things is or has, I should say, moved the arguments and policy discussions in one direction, and people haven't been aware of it. And so, like, it's kind of looking at the comeback of the social conservatives over the past 40 years and how they managed it. So, like, if you like Jane Mayer's Dark Money book, that talks about how they fundraised for it, and George Lakoff's book about Whose Freedom talks about how they hijacked the discourse and the language and like used that to their advantage to convince people and dominate the debates. So I thought that was really meaningful, being a language buff. So, but no one's heard of that book, so I would recommend it. Made me really think. Some of the points I didn't swallow whole, and so that's what like made me think. We're on to the belugas of number 5. Jim is saying, I'm reading Jamaica Inn at the moment. Reminds me of Wuthering Heights with the Moors and the dark brooding male character. Nice. I still haven't read any Daphne du Maurier. I have an ebook copy of Jamaica Inn, actually. I've got some random old 1950s copies from my grandparents of My Cousin Rachel, and one that's set in Ireland. I think I put it back. It's like something on the hill. But yeah, Daphne du Maurier, another big author I haven't read. There should be like not a bucket list, but like a aluminum can list that we can like shoot off. Big names I wish I had read and decided whether I liked, but I have not yet, and we could tackle them. Okay, beluga. Number 5. Belugas are nicknamed the canaries of the seas because of the sounds they make. What's a book you wanted to talk to others about after reading it, and why? So let's see. I've referenced this already, so I've already talked to you about it. All We Can Save. It's edited by Katherine K. Wilkinson and Ayana Elizabeth Johnson. Yes, those names are so hard for me to remember. But that is the book that made me want to read the science and nature writing book, because All We Can Save is a collection of essays and poetry and nonfiction and fiction. And it's just a beautiful compilation of climate-related stories and feelings that have both hopefulness and truth of the situation in them. I feel like a lot of climate-related writing is about hype, it's about urgency, it's about what to make the reader do, rather than like the person who's writing it, the truth of their interaction with the state of the world, if that makes sense. So, hopefulness and truth. Yes. Belugas. Number 6, narwhal. Male narwhals, known as the unicorns of the seas, have 2 teeth, including one long spiraling tooth that can grow nearly 9 feet long. What's a book you heard great things about before reading, only to discover it was less magical after reading it? It's kind of a funny lead up. So disappointing books. This is basically the category for that. Circle of Sisters by Judith Flanders, which I read for Victober as a nonfiction, was disappointing. And The Strange Case of the Alchemical Something by Theodora Goss. That's the young adult mystery version of girls who are related to Sherlock Holmes and like other fictional characters. It sounded really cool, but the writing or the plot, I don't know. It just felt too young and annoying to read. So less magical, let's say. Next question is the bowhead whale. While it's evident bowhead whales live well beyond 100 years of age, there's evidence that they may live to be 200 years old. What is the oldest book in your collection, or what book has been in your collection the longest? So here we're getting into hashtag ancient TBR or TBR veteran. And here I have another link. So let me pop that in the chat because I've talked about this before, which is the bookshelf tag. So I talk about the oldest book or the TBR vets in the bookshelf tag that I did, again, like a year ago. And bowhead whales. What else did I put? I have a book that I rescued for free from a used bookstore that doesn't really have a title, definitely doesn't have an ISBN. It was put together in the 1800s. It's called Gleanings. I've got a few other sort of written paraphernalia that are very old, like early 19th century, political pamphlet, something or other. But Gleanings it looks like a big photo album, and it's got a lot of religious stuff in there. Basically, it's what it's described as. Gleanings is like little bits of other publications, kind of like when you're gleaning whatever's left after the harvest. So I haven't read through it. I did pick things at random when I first got it, but I haven't read all the way through it. But it's not the oldest in my collection. It's the oldest in my collection, but I haven't had it the longest. We'll say that. All right. Thanks for stopping by, Brian. Appreciate it. Let's see. Jim says you could read Daphne du Maurier for May of the Moderns. Did she write anything before 1945? I don't know. Maybe. This is why this is going to be the last year that I do it, because like it's too constrictive. I'm done with the genre, and I'm going to move on to something else, or the time constriction. So the last prompt, number 8, Atlantic gray whale. Atlantic gray whales were sadly wiped out by humans. Today, only Pacific gray whales remain. Save the whales. What's one book that's either out of print or out of fashion that you wish would make a comeback? And I am here to say the queen of books you've never heard of is the perfect person to answer this question, right? My answer for this, and of course I can't link to them because they're not available anywhere, but unfortunately, and this is where I was going to link to an announcement, but I'm not ready with that yet. So the two that I have to recommend the most would be authors in general that you can find in used bookstores. Mary Stewart, who I will caveat is a little problematic in terms of women's agency and not having characters of color. But if you're going to put it in the mix with other books that are expanding your mind, you can also have this sort of look back in time romance suspense. She's like invented the suspenseful romance genre. So I really like Mary Stewart. She also did fantasy. She also did like Arthurian fantasy, but I haven't read that yet. She was writing in the 1960s mainly. And the other author I would recommend is D.E. Stevenson, who I've read one book by. And she was writing in the 1940s. So I read her for May of the Moderns. And I don't want to say sentimental because that's got a specific or a novel of sentiment, because it's not that tradition strictly, but it is very invested in internal sentiments of the characters and how they grow and how they struggle with something. So I guess character-based novel might be the best way to describe it. But I'm looking forward to reading more of her, both because I like the time period and the treatment she's treating. Sorry, and the topics she's treating, as well as her writing style and, general voice. We're just... Oh, it was written in the 1930s. Oh, okay, so maybe some do fit in. All right, nice. Ryan, originator of the whale tag, is slipping in right at the end, the tail end, needless to say, of the whale tag. Nice to see you here. So yeah, Mary Stewart and D.E. Stevenson, and Daphne du Maurier if you want, but I haven't read her, so I can't recommend her. But those are the out-of-print people that I would say go after, and maybe do it for May of the Moderns for our last run-through. The bonus, Moby Dick. Moby Dick was the great white sperm whale Captain Ahab never caught. What is a book you want to own but haven't found or bought? And what's stopping you from hooking that book? These are so cute, Ryan. So, The Last Thing You Surrender by Leonard Pitts Jr. I heard it's a great book from multiple people. It fits a niche that I want to read, which is like black mystery crime thriller. And I think he'd be a great one. I'm kind of like meh about a couple of the other recommendations in that genre that I've had. So I've settled on him, but now I can't find a copy of it. And I don't like to buy books full price new, because I don't need more books. I just want them. So that's what's stopping me, is that it's a want versus a need. And so I have very strict criteria for like allowing a book to come in. Like, I've got a pretty sweet deal at the used bookstore where I sell my books back. I've got a lot of credit there because I'm trying to get rid of books and get under 1,000. And so whenever I leave there, I inevitably leave with books, but whatever I pick up is dependent on their being in stock at the used bookstore. So Leonard Pitts Jr. has not come back. I saw him there and I almost got it. And then when I came back, it was gone. So buyer's remorse. What can I say? And did I say the people I tagged for this? I think I did. Yes. Everyone who reads it must converse. Tangible reads, Heidi, and Doris. So, yeah. My goodness. We've gone over an hour. Appreciate that. Oh, yeah. I tried to be nifty for people who are going to watch this on their replay, and I used the little scroller for the tag that I was on, so it's divided into 3 and I don't have to go back and wait 24 hours to be able to put chapters in. So hopefully that helps people distinguish at the end there. Whew. Okay, so I think I made it. I think I made it through all 3 tags. I'm parched. I am ready for lunch, but I wanted to say, in the remaining time, the next thing that we have is Friday, the last Friday of the month. It will be Final Friday's productivity sprints. I go 2 hours from 9 to 11 Pacific time. So if that works for you and you want someone to help get in the groove with to get some work done, I will be here and basically operating like this, having some chat, having some silent work time, and yeah, hopefully we can help each other get stuff done. Hopefully the people who are tagged will find this fun and entertaining to do, and I will be notified that they are going to carry on the tradition and can stop in to cheer them on as well. So that should be fun. Otherwise, happy reading, everybody. It's only Tuesday, and I hope you get through the week safe and sound and feeling splendiferous. I hope you're reading a good book, and I will see you guys again soon.